My name is Alex. I lived a normal life until one random text message shattered everything I thought was real. My perfect life turned out to be a lie, and my family an illusion. I learned a truth that I will never forget. A story of betrayal, lies, and a double life is my true hell. Life in a small town in Ohio was never particularly eventful, but it suited me. I worked at a local car dealership, a normal job, a normal life, and most importantly, I had a family that I was grateful for every day. My wife, Lisa, and our little daughter, Melanie. She was 6, and I was sure that she was the center of my world. I always thought that Lisa and I were a good match. We met in college through a mutual friend. She was studying to be a nurse. I was studying to be an auto mechanic. I was impressed by her determination and ambition. We got married 2 years after graduation. Of course, there were challenges like everyone else. But we managed, that's what I thought. We had a routine that made me happy. I would wake up at 6, make coffee, and prepare breakfast. Then I would pick Melanie up for kindergarten, and Lisa would go to her shift at the hospital. We would spend our evenings together, sometimes with wine, sometimes just watching TV. She was always a little withdrawn, but I wrote it off as tiredness. One ordinary Saturday morning, I was cleaning the living room. Melanie was playing with her dolls. Lisa had gone to her mother's. On the coffee table, I saw her phone. She rarely left it at home. It vibrated. A message flashed on the screen. I missed you. Yesterday was incredible. R. My heart sank. I didn't want to be the man who checked his wife's phone, but I clicked. The message history was like a cold shower. It turned out this wasn't the first message like this. There were dozens, photos, jokes, words she'd never said to me. I love it when you call me Lizzie. She hated that nickname when I used it. I can't wait until we're together again. My body still hurts from the night I spent with you. I sat there in silence, white noise in my head. This R? Who was he? Rick? Robert? Ray? He was saved in her contacts as just R. Maybe a coworker? A doctor? I didn't know. But one thing I knew for sure. My wife was cheating on me. I couldn't tell her right away that I knew. I was paralyzed. I sat on the couch with my phone in my hands while Melanie ran around. I smiled at her, trying not to break down. "Dad, look, I made a lock," she shouted. I nodded. Inside, I was no longer breathing. When Lisa returned, I acted as if nothing had happened. She didn't notice anything unusual. She hugged me, kissed me on the cheek, said that her mother was sending her greetings. I could smell a strange man in her hair. Was it my imagination? That evening, when she fell asleep, I continued searching. I downloaded the correspondence to my laptop. I didn't know why. Maybe as proof. Or to make sure once again that this wasn't a dream. I was collecting pieces of the truth like a detective, and then I saw the message that completely destroyed me. I know she thinks Alex is the father, but he's not. She's just afraid to tell the truth. I reread it 10 times. It can't be. Melanie, isn't my child? Is this some kind of mistake? Maybe it's about someone else. I went back to the previous messages. There was more. Do you remember that night in August? We were at the doctor's office. She said she was late. I knew right away. August, 6 years ago. We were celebrating our second wedding anniversary. She said she was pregnant. I cried with joy. She cried with me. And now it turns out that I didn't sleep that night. I was lying next to the woman I considered my best friend. I listened to her breathe in her sleep, and I hated every sound. I made an appointment with my lawyer in the morning. I couldn't wait any longer. I didn't know what to do. Can I do a DNA test without her knowing? The lawyer said yes, there are ways. I collected Melanie's hairbrush. I sent it to a private lab. They promised results in a week. That week was the longest of my life. I looked at Melanie and my heart was breaking. She was so much like Lisa, so sweet, gentle, trusting. She called me Daddy, and I wanted to believe it was true, that she was mine. But deep down, I already knew the answer, and she came in a black envelope. When I opened the results, my eyes went dark. Paternity percentage, 0%. My life was no longer mine. I sat in the kitchen holding that damn envelope in my hands. The sun had already risen, but it seemed to me that the world around me had gone dark. My ears were ringing. I reread the document over and over again, even though every line was already etched in my memory. Melanie was not my daughter. The worst part was that I didn't know what to do now. How could I tell Lisa? How could I tell Melanie herself? She didn't ask to come into this world. She wasn't guilty. But the truth was burning inside. I couldn't live this lie anymore. I made a decision. I had to talk to Lisa. She had to know what I knew. And I wanted to hear her side of the story, even if it was a lie. That evening, I offered to take Melanie to her grandmother's. She was delighted. Her mother was a sweet old woman who had always supported us. Lisa was a little surprised, but she agreed. I said I wanted to be alone with her. We hadn't had time alone for a long time. When we were alone, I made tea. She sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket. The TV was quietly playing some comedy. I turned off the sound and sat down opposite her. "We need to talk," I said calmly. "Okay." She became wary. "Did something happen?" I put the envelope on the table. "What is this?" She held out her hand. "Melanie's DNA test results." I couldn't take my eyes off her. Her fingers trembled. She opened the envelope, glanced at the first few lines, and stopped. The silence stretched for a few eons. Then she looked up slowly. "You had no right to—" "I had. As a man. As the one you convinced was his child." My voice trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. I was afraid to say. I didn't know how— "Who is he, Lisa?" She paused. Then she looked down. "Ryan. He worked with us at the hospital. An anesthesiologist. It happened once, then I didn't know I was pregnant. I thought it might be yours, but when Melanie started to grow up, I understood." "And what? Just kept quiet? Just went on living, playing the wife?" I got up from my chair. "Do you understand what you've done to me? I love you, Alex. I love our family. You're her father. In everything except genetics. Melanie only knows you. She adores you. But you betrayed me. You lied to me every day." I paced the room, trying to breathe. "And Ryan, are you still together?" She was silent, and that silence was enough. "Are you still together?" I raised my voice. "Sometimes," she said, barely audible. "It's not what you think. We didn't plan it. It's just— I started to feel something for him again. But it doesn't matter. I love you. I didn't want to lose what we had." I laughed, bitterly. "What we have? Lisa, we have lies. I thought I had a home, a wife, a daughter. But I have a fake life. And you have 2 husbands. And a child that was given to me as a gift," she cried, loudly. She sobbed so hard that her body shook. But I didn't care. I was empty. I left the house. I got in the car. I was driving aimlessly. The city was sleeping, and I was burning inside. I stopped by the lake. I sat in the dark, staring at the water. Memories rushed at me like waves. The first time I held Melanie in my arms. How we painted her room together. Her first dad. All those moments were real, but at the same time, fake. It was her truth, not mine. The next morning I returned. Lisa was sitting in the kitchen, her face swollen. "We need to decide how to move on," she said. "I don't want you to go. Melanie can't lose you. She can't know. You've always been her father." I don't know who I am now, Lisa. I don't know who you are or who she is to me. We were silent for a long time. I went into the bedroom, got my suitcase. I put a few things in. Lisa came over. "Please stop. Don't do this. I need time. If I stay, I'll break down completely. Will you see her?" "I'll see you. But I don't know how. And I don't know when." I looked her in the eye. "You ruined me, Lisa." I walked out the door without looking back. And my new life began. Alone. Without a home. Without a family. And with one painful question. If everything was a lie, then what was real? My new life began in an old motel on the outskirts of town. Not for lack of money or options. I just didn't want to be anywhere where I felt connected to the past. Everything in that room was gray, faded, and uncomfortable, but that was exactly what suited my condition. I didn't want comfort. I wanted silence, to hear myself among the wreckage of what I thought was my life. For 3 days, I barely left the house. I ate junk food from vending machines, drank strong coffee, and just stared at the ceiling. Every now and then, I looked at old photos on my phone. Melanie and I, her first Christmas. She's covered in cake frosting, her smile going from ear to ear. Her little hand is holding my finger. I thought, This is the best thing that ever happened to me. And part of me still believes it, but now with a different pain. The phone kept ringing. Lisa, then her mother, then even our friends. I ignored them all. I didn't want an explanation. I didn't want to hear any excuses. I only took one call from work. My boss, Jerry, a man in his 50s who always smelled of mothballs and gasoline, said curtly, "Alex, take as much time as you need. Just let me know when you're ready to come back. I need you here." That was the only moment I felt anything like warmth. On the 5th day, I finally gathered my courage and drove back to the city. I couldn't run away forever. I had to deal with the house, the custody, the life. Melanie didn't understand why her father wasn't coming. It wasn't her fault. She shouldn't suffer because of what her mother had done. I called Lisa. Her voice was soft. "Alec, I'm so glad you called. I want to see Melanie today. If you don't mind, just the two of us." "Of course, she's sad. She asks you every day." "At 3 in the park, where we always went on the swings." "Okay, I'll bring her." I came early. I bought her favorite lemonade and a little stuffed unicorn, the one she lost a year ago. My heart was beating so fast as if I were going on a first date. It was worse. I didn't know how to tell the little girl that her daddy wasn't home anymore, and that he probably never would be. When I saw her, she ran to me with a smile. Without a doubt. Without fear. She threw herself into my arms, and I hugged her as if I were holding myself together. "Daddy, I knew you would come." "Hello, sunshine." I was so sad. We sat down on a bench. I gave her a toy, and she was delighted. "Ooh, he looks like the one I lost. He's exactly the same. Remember, we looked for him for a week?" "Yeah, I cried then. But now I have a new one. Thank you, Daddy." Her happiness was sincere. Her eyes shone with trust. And that's what broke me the most. She didn't know that the world she knew was on the edge. "Mel, you know I love you so much, right?" "Of course, you're my dad." I swallowed hard. Sometimes adults have problems. Sometimes dad and mom fight. And dad has to live apart for a while, but it's not your fault. And you can always call me whenever you want. She looked down, then she looked at me again. "Are you coming home?" I couldn't answer. I just hugged her closer. Those 40 minutes in the park were like a ray of light, and at the same time, like a knife in the back. Because with each passing minute, I realized that no amount of DNA could change the way I felt about this child. She was mine. Not because of the test, because of everything else. After that date, I started taking her on weekends. We went to the movies, to pizza, to paint at home. I went back to work, holding myself together. But at night, I dreamed about Ryan. I didn't know what he looked like, but my imagination pictured him. Tall, handsome, confident. I saw him holding Lisa, laughing, playing with Melanie. I would wake up screaming. I was shaking. I drank water, sat on the edge of the bed, and whispered to myself, "This is my pain, but I won't let it break me." I arrived at Melanie's school early one day. I was standing in the hallway when I saw her running out of class, holding her husband's hand. I knew right away it was him, Ryan. Tall, with brown eyes, wearing a white coat. He must have been at school for a medical checkup. She hugged him, as she had me. "Hi, Ryan. Mommy said you'd be here today." "Yeah, baby, and you know what? I brought you a surprise. Chocolate cupcakes, just the way you like them." "Yay!" I took a step forward. He turned around. Our eyes met. "Alex?" he asked, as if we had already met. "Are you Ryan?" My voice was quiet but cold. "Yes, Melanie, go to class. I'll talk to him." She complied, though surprised. We were left alone. "Did you know?" I asked. He held his breath. "I suspected, but Lisa wouldn't let me talk. She said it would ruin everything, that you were a better father than I could be. But that didn't stop you from getting into bed with her. Did you?" He looked away. "I loved her before you did. We broke up. She went to live with you. And then it all went haywire. I don't want to lie to you. Yes, I was weak. And maybe I did something terrible, but I want to be a part of Melanie's life too. She's my daughter." My chest tightened. "Then prepare for war. Because I'm not giving this up that easily. And I'll see you in court." I turned and left, not waiting for an answer. For the first time since the day I got the DNA results, I knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to let him take the one thing that was real from me. Court is not just a place where people decide who is right. It is a place where every word is a weapon. where the truth is twisted like a wet rag, where you stand alone in front of the world, and even if your heart beats sincerely, everything depends on how you look on paper. After meeting Ryan, I woke up the next day and took action. I found a lawyer, Jill Reynolds, a woman in suits darker than night, with a look that could burn a tree. She didn't ask any unnecessary questions. She just said, "Do you have a connection with the child? Emotional stable contact? Financial support?" She is my world. That's enough. We are filing for joint custody. DNA is not the main thing. What is important is the child's welfare. The process dragged on. Lisa didn't want to go to court at first. She begged, "Alex, why? You can see her. I'm not forbidding. Just don't do it publicly." What if Ryan wants to take her to his place for the summer, or decides to move with her to another state? I can't be the one who just comes over for the weekend. I'm her father, Lisa, and I'm not going to let them throw me out of her life. Melanie didn't know anything yet. She lived in her own world, drawing, going to gymnastics, baking cupcakes with her grandma. I'd pick her up every Sunday and spend the day with her. We started keeping an adventure journal, writing down everything we did together, from trips to the zoo to nights of pizza and old cartoons. I wanted her to know that even if everything fell apart, we had something of our own. The first day of court was a formality. The judge, an elderly woman with a voice that was both reassuring and intimidating, listened to both sides. Ryan also filed a motion. He demanded official paternity and visitation rights. And here everything became real. At the second hearing, I was called to speak for the first time. My speech was not a rehearsed text. It was something I had been carrying around inside me for months. Melanie is not just my daughter by documents. She is my meaning. I was there from the moment she took her first breath. I taught her to ride a bike. I carried her in my arms when she had a fever. I showed her the stars and told her about the constellations. I can't imagine my life without her. And I won't let her lose her father just because the lab wrote a different last name in the genetic father column. The lawyers traded arguments. Meanwhile, I lived in constant anxiety. Every night was a struggle with fear. What if the court decides differently? What if one day she asks, "Dad, why aren't you my real father?" The third hearing was crucial. Lisa testified. She cried. She said, "I'm guilty, but Alex is Melanie's father. I know that. And maybe I betrayed him as a husband, but not as the father of my child." And then Ryan spoke. He was restrained. "I never wanted to hurt, but she is my daughter. I have the right to be in her life. I want her to know who I am." I was shaking. I barely restrained myself from screaming. After the hearing, the three of us stood in the hallway. I looked at him. "Do you know what distinguishes a real father from a sperm donor?" Choice. I chose to be with her every day. You chose Lisa, and now you want to get a child as a bonus. I just want to be a part of her life. Part? And what am I, a cover? After a month and a half of legal hassles, a decision. The court ruled joint legal custody between Lisa and me. Ryan has limited supervised visitation rights until the child is old enough to decide for himself which father he wants to see. I sat in the car after the verdict was announced and cried. For the first time in my life. Not from pain, from relief. This trial wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in me. Every day I asked myself, do I have the right to call her mine? And now I knew the answer. Yes, I do. Because I chose her. And I continue to choose her. Every day. It had been several months since the trial. I had been living in a kind of chaos, a shattered illusion, a broken heart, and a boundless sense of loss. The very person I had planned to build a life with turned out to be nothing like I thought. And even after all the evidence was on my side and Ryan admitted that the child wasn't his and he was hiding it, something happened that I couldn't have predicted. My ex-wife, Lindsay, was silent. After the trial, I tried to talk to her, to ask for an explanation, but she became more and more distant. "I did it because I was afraid," she said one day when we finally met on neutral ground, in a small cafe that had once been our favorite place. Her eyes held sadness and regret, but also a wall of unspoken secrets. "Because I was afraid?" "Of what exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice down. "I was afraid you would leave me if you found out the truth. I didn't know how to tell you, and Ryan? He manipulated me, kept me quiet. I didn't want you to feel pain, but it got out of control, she gasped, looking at her hands. I sat, silent. Something inside me was breaking at that moment, and I didn't know if it was anger or disappointment or just an incredible sadness. Because this whole story, this whole nightmare, wasn't just about betrayal and a double life. It was a story about losing trust, about the destruction of a family I had built over the years. Now I'm sitting in an empty apartment, looking at photos. Our first holidays together, the smiles of my child, the moments when I held her in my arms and thought life couldn't get any better. And suddenly it all seems untrue, an illusion that collapsed in one day. Can I forgive? Can I go back to who I was before? And can I be a father to a child who, although not from me, is still my blood, my responsibility? These are the most difficult questions that I ask myself every day. The dramatic story does not end there because life does not give simple answers. But I know one thing. True strength is in not giving up, in fighting, and even when it seems that all is lost, in finding the courage to move on.